Hello, hello, hello. Wokeness is a term often thrown around in modern political discourse. We can all recognise it, and we can all sense why we hate it. Yet, many a smug leftist has claimed that we aren't actually able to define it, or they propose a Trojan horse definition, claiming it to mean merely awareness of social injustice. In this video, I give a working two-word definition such that any person can understand what wokeness actually is and why it must be opposed. Unless you've been living in blissful ignorance for the past decade, the term woke would have been practically inescapable. Unfortunately, as with much modern politics, the term is often thrown around inaccurately and without being properly understood. Not unlike how Americans call just about anything left-wing liberal. However, despite the snootiness of the leftists who claim that the right can't actually define the term, wokeness is not only definable but well understood. But even if someone couldn't define it on the spot, that doesn't make their observations and opinions any less valid. The common sense of the common man is utterly despised by the mid-wit leftist snob, even if said common man is completely correct. I should also mention that there is a popular definition of wokeness, namely awareness of social injustice, but this is a Trojan horse. Wokeness is not about awareness. It's a distinct ideology of its own, complete with policies, strategy and ideals. Yet they want to put forward one definition, a definition to which no reasonable person would object, only to sneak their real ideas in through the back door. Many self-proclaimed woke people may fall for this definition, but they are naught but useful idiots. So what is wokeness? I have a very simple definition. Intersectional Neo-Marxism. But I'm jumping the gun. What do intersections have to do with it? And Neo-Marxism? Don't worry, I shall explain. Realistically, this story starts with the French Revolution, but I'll spare the effort and skip straight to Marx. Arguably the most infamous philosopher of all time, Marx has been highly influential within the left. Without getting too far into it, there are a few facets of Marxism that one ought to be aware of. Firstly, as everyone knows, Marxists want everything to be publicly owned. In effect, this means that there is no private property and everything is under state control and ownership. This is the seize the means of production element. In the real world, where people don't simply give away their possessions, Marxism unavoidably requires totalitarian state control. Marxists also have a revolutionary mindset. Revolutionaries can be best summarised by saying that they want to completely destroy and replace practically every institution and social norm currently in existence. Any appeal to tradition, appeal to normalcy, appeal to nostalgia, or even appeal to the knowledge and practices developed throughout the past is utterly despised by the revolutionaries. Lastly, Marxism famously used to be about class struggle. Marx viewed the upper and middle classes as being evil oppressors of the morally virtuous lower class, despite Marx himself being a privileged and lazy nobleman. It is this framing of oppressor versus oppressed that informs almost all Marxist radical fervour. The rich aren't just viewed as privileged, but as evil. Beyond just this, Marxists believe that their cause is so morally just, the envisioned end so glorious, that any means of obtaining it are justified. This is why Marxists and their ideological descendants are so prone to and accepting of atrocities, violence, deceit, and even genocide. But in much of the West, and especially in Britain and America, the Marxists realised that they couldn't physically fight their way into power. Any dream of a workers' revolution in the streets was naught but an impossible fantasy. Instead, the Marxists realised that they'd need to be more cunning. They would need to infiltrate the systems, institutions, and every aspect of public life, corrupt the minds of the young, and, after only a couple of generations, destroy the state from within, or at least detach it from everything it once stood for. This is Neo-Marxism. It's the same ideology, but without the violence, with far greater subtlety and far longer lasting support. Neo-Marxists subsequently made more palatable cases for themselves. They claimed to care about equality, they claimed to care about the poor, they claimed to care about treating people with decency. That's all. No, of course that wasn't it. Neo-Marxism is a whole cavalry regiment of Trojan horses. They infect the schools, the museums, the regulators, the broadcasters like the BBC, the universities, everything. Then, when everyone has grown up in and around these Marxist-infected institutions without a single shot ever being fired, they have already won. I warn you, this is the country we already live in now. Finally, this leads us to our unique flavour of Marxism, wokeness. The Marxist framing of oppressor versus oppressed is found throughout all forms of socialism. Marx viewed the divide through the lens of class, and the nationalist socialists through the lens of nationality, but in multiracial, multicultural America, where any man can supposedly rise from the very bottom to the very top, neither national nor class divides would do. Instead, they created intersectional theory. To keep it brief, intersectional theory is all about classifying the various forms of Marxian oppressors and oppressed, along the lines of what we in the West consider to be minorities. Every group that has ever been disenfranchised in the West gets to be a minority, and the more minority cards you have, the more oppressed you supposedly are. White, oppressor. Non-white, oppressed. Straight, oppressor. Gay, oppressed. Male, oppressor. Female, oppressed. Trans people are oppressed. Disabled people are oppressed. Foreigners are oppressed. Every embittered wanker can now claim to be oppressed. All except the straight, white, Christian, British, American or European man. In their world, the Victorian gentleman or American entrepreneur is the epitome of evil, regardless of how they actually are as individuals. In fact, try as you might, individual merit is irrelevant to these people. They care only about your group identity. So that's what wokeness is. It's pragmatic, subtle Marxism, re-envisioned through the lens of intersectional theory, working to infiltrate the institutions and enact policy towards the goal of destroying the wealth of the white man. They may pretend to care about minorities, and I suspect many of them genuinely do, though it's clear from Southern Africa that it's not actually ever about demographic size, but the goal of those pulling the strings has only ever been about taking revenge on the British Empire and taking what we Brits, Yanks and Europeans have built and hoarding it for themselves. In fact, their very definition of whiteness describes the typical Victorian gentleman and doesn't really mean the colour of your skin. And the same for blackness really means a primitive African or popular black American culture. But for all their efforts to be subtle, they fucked up. They had made such great progress in achieving their nefarious aims. Everything seemed to be headed their way. Obama was in power, Blairism was rife throughout Britain, but they felt their grip slipping. Gamergate, Brexit, Trump. The woke activists, instead of tactically retreating, pushed harder and faster for their victory. A hypothetical frog in slowly boiling water would not jump out of the pan, but the woke put the flame up as high as it could go. We started to notice what was happening, then we started to push back. They are now desperately trying to cling on to power, but they've overstepped, and now the power is coming back to us, the patriotic, decent folk who love our countries, cultures, and national values. As evil, manipulative, and prevalent wokeness is, we have real hope to take back control. It is imperative that we seize this opportunity. Anyway, I'm sure there are many more facets of wokeness that may still not make sense to you, and I'm happy to explain them in the comments below. If you enjoyed, I encourage you to give this video a like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and God save the King.